So to start, I want us to think about this question. What makes you feel alive? What lights you up? What percolates excitement throughout your body? So you're welcome to jot down 3 or more things in your journal or notebook around 3 things that make you feel really alive. These could be absolutely anything. So for me, what makes me feel alive is travel. I love going to new places, experiencing new cultures, tasting new foods, smelling new smells, learning how to navigate new terrain. These things this makes me feel deeply alive. Another thing that helps me feel alive is being naked in nature. Just something about having there's no separation between my skin and the earth makes me feel so deeply alive and deeply, deeply present. What else makes me feel alive? Another thing that makes me feel alive is love. Getting to know a new person intimately really makes me feel alive. So these are just 3, but lots of different things make me feel alive. And I invite you to list your 3 or more of what makes you feel alive. So you can pause this to take a note, and then when you're ready, you can continue again. The next question is, what is pleasure? Pleasure, just from your own definition. There is no right or wrong, but I invite you to think about, what is pleasure to you? When do you find yourself in pleasure? So I find pleasure through food. I find pleasure through connection with other people. I find pleasure in experiencing new places. I find pleasure in being out underneath the sun. So I find pleasure in so many things. And if I were to define what pleasure is, I would say that pleasure is the state of deep ecstasy that is induced from the senses. So any sort of senses that create pleasure. And then the next question is, what is presence? So how would you define presence? What does it mean, this word presence? For me, presence is it is being completely here and now in the present moment. It is embodying my fullness of aliveness inside of me through my intention, through my smile, through my words. It's being completely there with someone or something or within my environment. So I experience presence when I'm out in nature and I watch the air rustle the leaves, or when I see a fresh flower for the first time, or when I'm deeply engaged in a conversation, or when I'm feeling overwhelmed and I tune into my breath. These different things allow me to feel presence. And then the question that ties them all together is, why are they important? Why is it important to feel alive? Why is it important to know pleasure? Why is it important to know presence? Why are these important? You can write down whatever you think about why they're important. From my particular understanding or perspective, I find all 3 of these to be important because we're here on this planet in a human body. We are alive. Our breath, whether we feel alive or not, our breath anchors us here on this planet in aliveness. Our breath is a pranic life force energy that moves through us. So this alone is important because we are this, we are alive. However, there's a lot of people who are alive innately, but they do not walk around with aliveness. Right? They walk around operating maybe in a lower vibration that doesn't allow them to enjoy life through pleasure. Pleasure is important because we have these five senses or more that sort of tickle our senses to enjoy pleasure. Like our ears can enjoy the pleasure of music, our mouths can enjoy the pleasure of food, our nose the pleasure of scent, our eyes the pleasure of beauty. So much pleasure that can be experienced in a human body. And why not? What's the opposite of pleasure, right? It's pain. And if that's also a part of being alive, but we don't have to dwell there. We can also invite more pleasure into our life. And this creates more aliveness in us. And then why is presence important? Because life could go by so fast in the blink of the eye and you were not here to enjoy it. Maybe you were operating too much in the past or too much in the future. But when you can invoke presence within your being, you can actually sip the deliciousness of each moment and not have to yearn later in life, wishing you had done something that you never had the courage to do, or wishing to change something because you were present through it all. So these are the reasons why I think they are important to our life. We have lived lives filled with a lot of suffering, a lot of pain, a lot of trauma, but that's only one aspect of being a human being. There's a whole another spectrum that I invite us to move more towards because that is the real nectar of living in these human bodies at this time. Okay. There are some tools on here that I had no idea about. I just accidentally pressed that button, but I guess the universe is like, no, that's not accident. Okay. All right. So moving on. Introduction to feminine magic, mysteries, and mysticism. So let's break these three words down because they can seem very similar and they kind of merge and they can be a little airy fairy a bit. So I wanted to give some definitions that I found on Google to support us in anchoring in to what these words truly mean. So starting with magic, the power of apparently influencing the course of events by using mysterious or supernatural forces. Okay, the power of apparently influencing the course of events by using mysterious or supernatural forces. This is magic. So when you hear the word magic, maybe you think of witches or wizards or specific shows you watched growing up. I know for me, I loved watching Charmed growing up. So whenever I think of the word magic, I think of them. And Charmed, if you're not familiar with the show, there's three sisters and they're all witches. And they have supernatural powers, right? Like one can move things with her mind, another can is psychic and can see premonitions. Another one is a white lighter slash half witch, so she can like orb from one place to another. And so anyway, there's just a lot of magic that happens within the show. And today we're going to be talking about how magic shows up in femininity, but I wanted to just first anchor us with this very standard definition. Then we move on to mysteries. So, mysteries is anything that is kept secret or remains unexplained or unknown. The mysteries of nature. So, mysteries, anything that is kept secret or remains unexplained. A lot of the wisdom that I'll be sharing today and throughout these four journeys are mysteries. They are feminine mysteries that have been kept secret for a long, long time because of many different things. We won't get into it, but essentially, a lot of us were not ready to receive the mysteries of this wisdom. But now is the time. The goddess has said that now is the time for us to really be able to receive these mysteries, and they no longer have to be a mystery. And we're going to be diving into the mysteries of femininity as well in a bit. Finally, mysticism, an immediate spiritual intuition of truths, believed to transcend ordinary understanding or of a direct, intimate union of the soul with God through contemplation or ecstasy, obscure or irrational thought. So, mysticism is this idea of having a direct experience with the divine or with the universe or with spirit or with God, goddess, however you might use those words. It's a direct experience that cannot be logically explained or reasoned to make sense. That's why it can be irrational thought. But inside, you just know. That is mysticism. It is an inner knowing that cannot be explained. All right, so let's dive into this idea of magic. And we're going to first start with the magic cities of being a woman. Siddhi is a Sanskrit term that is given for any spiritual or seemingly magical power or capability, which is obtained usually through rigorous and accomplished spiritual practices such as yoga and meditation. So, back in the day, and even still today, there's a lot of yogis and meditators who rigorously practice certain things so that they can obtain these magical powers. And these magical powers are cities. There's two types, right? But the Sanskrit word directly translates as perfection, accomplishment, or success. Okay, so these success magics. Um, so Buddha taught that there's two types of cities. One is normal cities, the forces of the world that transform elements. So this could be like the elements. This could even be a form of magic. The forces of the world that transform elements. The way we get gold or the way that the earth produces crystals. So there's just these normal cities, and then there's extraordinary cities, the ability to open up for the truth that leads to realization and enlightenment. All right, beautiful. In the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, the process of attaining a range of different cities is outlined in great detail. He states that they may be reached through either one, birth. So some people are just naturally born with these spiritual abilities based on their past karma. Two is herbs. So specific hallucinogens or plant medicines can spontaneously trigger cities, although, of course, they should be used in a controlled manner. And then finally, mantras and self discipline. So the use of mantras, which are like prayers or a certain pattern of words that have a deeper meaning. This and other spiritual disciplines can develop cities in the most natural and desirable way. So these are the ways that Patanjali talks about how most people are able to get these cities. So we're going to talk about now how women naturally have these cities. So can you guess some of the cities women are naturally born with? What do you think are some of the cities women are naturally born with? No, they don't have to do any hard work, no rigorous mantra or um, yoga practices or meditative practices. They're just naturally born with them. So take a moment and just think about what some of these cities are. You can jot them down if you like. And then how about those that can be acquired throughout life? So, what are some other cities or magical powers, supernatural powers that women can acquire throughout life? So, maybe they're born into it, right? Some are born into certain cities, and then others can acquire it naturally throughout life. So, just taking a moment to think about that. And I will share with you what I think are some of the magic cities of being a woman. So, one, a magic city is ovulation. The fact that our bodies innately and intuitively release this beautiful, beautiful egg that has all of the necessary essential elements to create life. a whole nother human being. That to me is a huge city. The fact that it happens every month and that we are actually born with all of our eggs while we are still in our mother's womb. So all of these eggs were already there even before we were birthed. And then another city I think that maybe most people would not agree with is menstruation. So, menstruation has been seen as a big taboo, problematic, like gross, nasty thing, especially in the Western culture. But actually, the fact that we can bleed every month without harm is a magical city. Like menstruation, because the egg was not, because the egg during ovulation was not, what's the word? Fertilized. It is then released through the body through menstruation or through blood. Now, this same ovulation, the same egg that had all of the essential elements to create life, it's all still there, but just coming out now through the vagina in the flow of our blood. And so actually that blood has magic powers. And there's a lot of tantrikas and different spiritual practices that use that menstrual blood in specific rituals. Next, I would say giving birth is a big magical power that women just naturally have. The fact that we can birth a whole human, a whole community, a whole family lineage is magic, pure magic. Breastfeeding is a magic city. So I don't know if you know that even if you did not give birth, but you have a child that needs to be fed, and the only way for them to feed is through you, your body will actually begin to lactate and produce the milk it is required to sustain the life of that child. It's wild, right? Like it's that's a magical power, that the fact that your body can produce that milk even if it has not given birth to support life, sustaining life. It is a magical problem, a magical power. So, next, I would say another city I believe are part of just being naturally a woman is all the various forms of orgasm. So there's so many different types of orgasm, and that state of ecstasy in the body, whether it's momentary or prolonged, is a magic city. Okay, so that is for a whole nother day and topic, but definitely a magic city. Creativity, the fact that we can create healing herbs, herbalism, psychic powers, intuitive knowing, singing, healing. These are all magical cities of being a woman, and there are so many more. So I'm sure as you go through this journey, maybe more will come to mind, and you're welcome to write them down anytime and share them with us within this community. All right, moving on to the mystery of being a woman. So, the feminine energy, body, form, emotions, cycles, and pleasure are a mystery. As in, there's no one size that fits all. So, being a woman in itself is a great mystery because each of our bodies are unique and are different, just like a flower. There's not one kind of flower, there's not one kind of woman out there. And that is the mystery of being a woman. And it's about discovering our own mystery, being able to get to know ourselves without comparison or without plugging into mainstream information that says what a woman is about. It's about getting to know yourself, getting to know the mystery that is you. It is constantly in expansion, moving in its own unique rhythm. There's always more to learn, embracing your body because it's moving through these cycles, these different arc ways naturally every month, which we will go into more in a moment. It has its own unique rhythm. And so when you embrace your body as a mystery, you get to support yourself in getting to know your body and yourself a lot better. I invite you to forget what you learned from those around you. The time is now to go within and find out for yourself what is really true based on your body, intuition, and inner mystic. So that's what this maiden arcway journey is all about. It's about getting to know yourself in a new way, forgetting what you learned that no longer serves you, and embracing your own inner knowing through being your own inner mystic. The mysticism of being a woman. So, this is the practice of being our own inner authority. This is so important for me to stress during the maiden archway because during this maiden archway, which is usually between the years of 0 to 25, we're so prone to be indoctrinated by other people's beliefs, especially our families. And so instead of trusting our own inner authority, we often trust those outside of ourselves based on their status or position, and that does a big injustice for ourselves because then we're putting our power in other people's hands instead of claiming our own power, claiming our own inner knowing, and claiming our own inner mystic experience of this life through this body. Allowing truths to form through inner knowing, intuitive guidance that goes beyond logic and intellect. It is the union of the body, the mind, the spirit, our highest self, the divine, earth, and universe. This, when we're merging all of these through and together, we come into greater harmony beyond the ego, beyond the personality, beyond even the world. And we begin to come into direct union with the divine. This is the mysticism of being a woman. Diving now into cycles and rhythms. So you will notice throughout this year, throughout even what we're doing at Fierce Feminine Rise, that I will be talking a lot about cycles and rhythms. And so it's important to define them because they might seem like they're the same, but there is some difference between the two. So, starting with cycles. Cycles is a series of events that are regularly repeated in the same order, right? Like day and night, day and night. This is a cycle that we experience. Can you think of any other cycles that we experience that are repeated in the same order? Maybe you thought about the seasons. So the spring, the summer, the autumn, the winter, this is also cycles that happen repeated in the same order. The fact that we, usually menstruate every month is a cycle, but it's actually also a rhythm. So now we'll go into what rhythms are. Rhythms is a particular type of pattern formed by strong, repeated movement, sound, and rhythms. So, menstruation becomes a rhythm because it's not always the same order every month. Our bodies are always changing, and you might notice that sometimes you menstruate during the full moon, sometimes you menstruate during the new moon, sometimes in between those phases. And that's okay because that's your own rhythm. So our even though our bodies are moving in these cycles of experience, our unique rhythm within this cycle is going to be different. And it's about knowing and being able to read our different rhythms and sometimes even repattern them for greater harmony in our lives. All right, so now I want to dive into sort of the magic, the mystery, and the mysticism of feminine wisdom. And so this is really going to be our foundation to feminine wisdom. So I invite you to really make a note of this. Maybe you even want to draw this depiction in your own journal, just so you have a frame of reference and anchor for this wisdom to begin to settle into the psyche, into your inner knowing, into your body. So as you can see, we have the four directions in the center of the circle: north, south, west, and east. And each of those directions opens up into a season. So within the circle, you can see that we have the four seasons, the four cyclical seasons: winter, spring, summer, and autumn. We're currently right about here on this cycle. We have moved past winter, but now we're moving into spring and getting closer and closer. Hence, why we are now moving through the maiden archway. So the maiden is just one archetype for this archway. There are a few others that you might come across in your life, but to name the main three that I believe that this archway represents is, of course, the maiden, the lover, and the martyr. So we're moving through different archetypes all the time in our life, and we will dive into all three of these later in our portals throughout the weeks. But for now, I just want to give you a taste of what these. Oh, I see a little mistake that I made here. So I just want to highlight that instead of ovulation, this would be pre ovulation. So pre ovulation, before ovulation. So yeah, so the maiden lover art martyr archetype, this is going to represent a woman's life cycle between the ages of 0 to 25. But because it also represents spring and that it also represents pre-ovulation and also represents the waxing moon, you can see that we're actually moving through the maiden archetype or this arcway all the time in our lives, whether it be monthly with our menstrual cycle, whether it be yearly when we enter the spring season, or whether it be the moon cycle. So we're always sort of moving through this arcway no matter our age. And then we move along the circle to the next season. We've got our direction, our season, and then the archetype for this arcway is the mother. The mother, but also the nurturer, also the mystic. These three archetypes fall within the arcway of summer or the mother arcway. And this is also going to be represented by ovulation, that time of the month when maybe have heightened creativity or heightened sexual desire, heightened energy. You can also see this reflected in the full moon as well as summer, right? Summer is usually when our energy is highest, the sun is out, the days are longer, and there's more creativity flowing, there's more connection going on, and just a lot more aliveness in general. So, this part of a woman's life cycle is usually from the ages of 26 to 45. So during this time in our lives, we've entered into the mother archetype or archway. Like I said, we are always moving through these cycles of energy. So it's important not to get stuck that we are just in this one archway. No, even though I'm in my mother archway currently because I'm between the ages of 26 and 45, I still dance with my maiden every month. And when I'm in my lover archetype energy, when I'm meeting new people and that sort of thing, I'm also dancing with that energy. So it's important not to confine yourself into the arcways based on your age, but just know it's a representation of life and to just sort of give us some grounding in this wisdom. Next season is autumn, ruled by the direction of the west. And this is the queen, the wild woman, the huntress. This is ages 46 to about 63, 65 years old. And this is the time in our life, a time in our menstrual cycle when we are pre-menstruation, or you might often hear the acronym PMS, premenstrual syndrome, which we'll talk more about later in our arcway journeys once we get to this queen phase. But essentially, it's that time right before you're going to menstruate. So you might feel a little bit more fiery as far as like um, more direct with your words. It's a time in a woman's life also when she is putting her needs first more so than when she was in the mother phase. It's when she's going after what she wants. And this is going to be represented by the moon phase of waning. Last but definitely not least, we have North ruling the season of winter. This is represented by the crone archway, the grandmother, wise woman archway. This is the time in our lives when we are 65 years or older and when we're coming into the stillness of winter. This is also the time of the month when we might be menstruating. A lot of wisdom can come through during this time in our cycle when we're menstruating. And this also is represented by the new moon. So I want you to really make note of this chart because you're going to begin to chart your own energy starting next week. You're going to start charting your own energy of knowing where you're at in all of these different cycles. So, where are you age range in Earth years? Where are you in your menstrual cycle? Maybe you've never tracked it before, and this is a prime opportunity to do it. Where are you in the world, and what season are you cycling through? And where is the moon at currently? So these are all beautiful ways to sort of to support us in grounding in this wisdom and beginning to practice it in our daily lives so that we can pick up on the thread of pattern, our own rhythmic pattern that we've been dancing within throughout our life thus far. And when we're able to take note of this, observe ourselves, and see what's coming up, we can then make adjustments to support our body, our mind, our emotions, our wombs, our hearts in a way that is going to make moving through these cycles more harmonious. So this is my own interpretation of how the elements dance within the arcways, but I invite you to explore it on your own and see which elements feel most alive for you when you are moving through all of these different arcways. So for the maiden, I really see this in connection to water, connection to air as well. Water, we came from the waters of our mother's wombs. That's how we entered into 0 to 25 into our maiden arcway. It is also our when our sexuality is starting to peak and usually the time when we begin menstruating. So for me, this all represents a lot of water element. The air comes in because if you think of spring, it can often be a little airy. There's seeds flowing to be sprouted into new places where flowers can bloom. There is also air represents curiosity, wanting to gain more wisdom and knowledge, wanting to understand ourselves in a deeper way. And so when you're in the maiden archway, this is when you want to learn and you want to acquire new knowledge. You're fresh into the earth. You want to learn and know how to do things. If you've ever witnessed a child or a baby, they're very excited to learn. And so, this is why I think this archetype is represented by air. Then we have our mother archway. And for me, because of summer, this has a lot of fire because we're ovulating during the season or this cycle. There's a lot of fire, a lot of heat, a lot of passion. But then, of course, you have the element of water as well, because if you're a mother, you usually give birth during this archway. And when you're giving birth, you're providing the waters of your womb to give life to new to the maiden, right? The mother gives life to the maiden. And so you also have the element of earth because you need this element of sustenance and stability and support in order to nurture your loved ones and nurture yourself. Then we come to the queen archway. And for me, this represents air because the queen is now using all of her creativity and all of the things that she has learned thus far in her life to make some offering to the earth. And so this creativity element, this philosophy element, this learning element needs a lot of air. It also represents fire for me. Also because air during autumn, the leaves are falling from the trees, which requires this air as well. So there's just a lot of more air circulating during this season. And then I would say fire as well, because the queen often gets a little bit of a bad rep because she can be feisty, she can be direct, and she can be combative if necessary. And these are not these are not traits that are normally attributed to women, and they can be frowned upon or looked down upon. But Queen actually needs her fire in order to set clear boundaries. She needs her fire in order to speak her truth. And she needs her fire so that she can create and leave the legacy she's meant to leave on the planet. And then finally, we come to Crone Archway. And for me, this represents Earth because stillness, right? Grounding in. The grandmother is still. She is wise like ancient trees, deeply rooted into the earth, needing not go anywhere, but to just completely provide that support and that sustainability for her growing family. Water, because menstruation, right? When you're menstruating during this phase in your life, or this cycle, your monthly cycle of menstruation, it is the water element that is being released from the body, water and earth. And then air as well, because the grandmother, the crone, she represents infinite ancient wisdom. And so, unlike maybe the air of the queen or the maiden, this air is more soft, it's more still, but it's ever permeating. I would even attribute it to maybe the ether element more so than the air, because all comes from the grandmother, just like all elements come from ether. The ecology of these cycles and rhythms. Ecology is of or relating to the patterns or relationships between living things and their environment. And so, this is the invitation once again to begin to discover your own ecology, to discover your relationship between these different arcways, between these different cycles, and also your own environment, the environment of your body, the environment of what's around you. And the question, right, that is asked by so many shamans is, can all four directions of the lands be friends? Imagine all four directions of our world. Can they all be friends? At this time in our life, in our history, maybe the answer is no, but the possibility could be yes. And for the four directions to be friend outwardly first, they need to be friends within ourselves, within our own bodies. And so this is what we're learning to do. We're learning to become friends with these four different directions, these four different arcways, by taking them piece by piece by piece by piece to better understand what each represents for us, beginning to understand the ecology of our own life patterning and how it relates to environment and relationships with other people. These cycles inform our rhythms throughout our life, whether we know them or not. They are informing our rhythm. What you experienced in your maiden is going to directly affect your mother and directly affect your queen and directly affect your crone. So if they are not harmoniously moving as one, they can cause friction and dis-ease within the other ones. When studied, observed, and repatterned for harmony, we can create a new rhythm that moves us through life with ease, joy, prosperity, curiosity, celebration, and divine inner knowing. So these are tools to support you through this threshold. And altars are great because they can ground the energy for your intention on this journey, or ground the energy of the environment in where you are going to be practicing. And it can be a place even for you to make offerings to your own inner maiden, right? So I invite you to create an altar for your inner maiden. Maybe you want to take a picture from the time when you were 0 to 25 and place it on your altar. Maybe you want to place flowers, any kind of offerings to your inner maiden. Maybe you even want to have offerings for your ancestors or your guides or whatever else you believe in. It's also important to remember that our body is also an altar or a temple that deserves our loving attention and sacredness. So be sure to come home to the altar of your body each day, through breath work, through meditation, through yoga, through stillness, through dance, through reflection writing, whatever it might be. Just remember to also remember that this body is an altar on our journey. And then rituals are used to create an energetic practice, a subtle, invisible, yet very real and powerful vibration to direct life force energy for a specific intention. So we'll be utilizing rituals to support us in, once again, integrating the wisdom into our day to day life. That's what rituals do. They create a culture of integration of higher wisdom that maybe we cannot always have access to when we are getting ready for our job or taking care of our kids or doing like mundane worldly things. And so rituals support us in crossing the threshold into the spiritual realm, into the feminine mysteries that we'll be diving into. So I want you to have a lot of sovereignty and freedom in how you create ritual. And ritual can be a heavy word depending on how you were brought up or raised. So instead of ritual, you can just see it as a practice, like a spiritual practice to support you in integrating the wisdom of the divine or the wisdom of your own body, which we are getting to know now in a new way. Anything that I say is optional for you to integrate as truth in your life, right? This journey is not about me telling you what your truth is. It's about finding your own truth. Anything I say is just an offering to support you as a guiding light on this journey, but is not something you need to take in if it does not resonate for you. So please practice discernment. Take what resonates, compost what doesn't, and remember that you are your own inner healer. You are your own inner mystic, and you have all of the tools inside of you already within your body, within your womb, within your DNA, your blood. And we are simply now activating it, turning it on so that it can be more alive in your daily life to support you on your continued journey of being an embodied, feminine, embodied being.